This has Leafs fans fired up as following the Toronto Maple Leafs' huge win against the Montreal Canadiens, scoring 7 unanswered goals. Craig Berube has come out and revealed some very interesting details surrounding that win. We're also going to break down what this means going forward for the Leafs, as this has serious implications as the trade deadline inches closer and closer over the coming weeks. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel. This is the place to be for daily Leafs content. But Darius, we had a live stream about it yesterday. It was a massive win for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and obviously the Habs went up 3-0 in the first period. The Leafs scored 7, really 6, but 7 unanswered goals to take care of business against a very good, one of the hottest teams, if not, I mean, they are the hottest team, were the hottest team in the NHL, in the Montreal Canadiens. The Leafs come out, the Joseph Woll show, and they come out and absolutely crush the Montreal Canadiens for the first time ever. For the first time in franchise history, the Leafs won a game in Montreal after being down by 3 goals, coming back to secure a 7-3 victory. We're going to dive into some quotes here in a second, but Darius, I just want to get your thoughts on this insane, huge win. We obviously had a stream on it, but it was quite frankly, it was one of the better games we've seen from the Toronto Maple Leafs. The best game all year, one of the better games we've seen for them in the past few years, and ultimately, it is a huge win, not only for, of course, the morale, but on the standings as well.
Yeah, and it has, like you mentioned off the top, big implications heading into the trade deadline because, like I mentioned on the stream last night, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs that we saw last night is actually closer to what they actually are, what this iteration of the team is, than what we saw last weekend and on that 3-game losing streak. I think they're actually much closer to what we saw last night as a team, which I think is very encouraging. And for Brad Treliving, it gives him basically a green light, and obviously Brandon Shanahan has to approve it, to go out and make some pretty big deals where he didn't really last year. And we've seen years where the Leafs don't go out and make big deals because of the way that the team is playing. So they're in first right now, and it was a big win, a big comeback too, because they stayed 3 points ahead of the Florida Panthers in the Atlantic Division. If they continue this, they're going to finish probably first in the Atlantic Division, play a wild card team, and I think that is an incentive to go out and make a pretty big move. So everything's, pretty good amongst Leafs Nation right now. And again, I think that the team we saw last night, that fight to crawl back into the game, Bobby McMahon, pushing them in the first period, the second period, and getting things going. I think this is closer to what the Leafs actually are this season.
Yeah, very, very big win, and we'll dive into it a little bit. Craig Berube came out and he spoke out on the Leafs coming back from down 3-0 for the first time since 1969. Been a long time since it happened. It is great. It is great, though. It is a great rivalry. We all know that. We talked about it. In my opinion, it wasn't just another game. It was a big game for both teams. Montreal has been playing extremely well. It showed in the first period, but we got our feet underneath us and started playing the right way, doing the right things. It was a great comeback win from the guys. Our goaltender led the way, in my opinion. And it's very, and we also saw the Ryan Reeves thing, but it's very interesting, and it's very rare where, a coach will come out in the regular season and say it's more than just another game. Usually it's the opposite. They'll say that, it's just another game. We just had to take care of business. But, I mean, it wasn't. Everybody felt it in the, I guess, watching the game, in the building, Hockey Night in Canada. But all that stuff aside, like, the Montreal Canadiens are making a serious push for a wild card spot here, and with every win that the Leafs get, they've moved closer and closer to, or separate themselves further and further away from the Florida Panthers in the Atlantic Division. So, I mean, it wasn't just another game for a few reasons, and of course the rivalry. It's very rare, though, that you hear a coach come out and say that about a game, let alone in the regular season.
Not only is it refreshing, though, I love this because, when Sheldon Keefe, I hate to keep bringing him up, and I don't mean to bury him either because I did like him as a coach. He just couldn't get this team over the hump. But back then, there was a lot of quotes from players and he himself where, this is just another game. It's a regular season, we're still in first. But Craig Berube came out and stated the obvious. This was not just another game. You're playing the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal, and Montreal is one of the hottest teams and has one of the best goalie tandems right now in the entire NHL. This wasn't another game. And the fact that you went down 3-0 and battled back made the game that much sweeter. So again, I like the comments from Craig Berube. The regular season matters a lot this season if you're in the Eastern Conference. Everyone is so close. If you're not the Buffalo Sabres, you're in the mix right now. So every game does matter, and I'm glad that he said that, this wasn't another regular game. This was the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal, and there were huge implications on the game, right? Toronto needs to win to keep that, distance with the Florida Panthers, and Montreal now falls that much further down in the gap between Toronto and Montreal. And obviously they're fighting for that wild card spot as well with almost everyone else in the Eastern Conference. So it was a big game. So I'm glad Craig Berube came out and said this, and I enjoyed the fight back.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And Some more quotes as well. Obviously, we saw the Ryan Reeves try to fight with Arbor Jack guy. Arbor Jack guy pointing to the scoreboard, aged pretty badly. And they spoke out on the 3-0 hole. Just win more battles. We watched, they skated. We didn't win any puck battles. We exposed them in the middle of the ice in the first period. All 3 goals were preventable. We were just a little bit loose. Again, it is about winning the battles. And we were all curious about what Craig Berube said in between the first intermission and the second intermission to get them ready to go. Clearly, it was just about winning puck battles, which makes a ton of sense because they won puck battles the rest of the game. He went on to say that they're resilient. They are. They did a good job of managing the game from that point on. I thought they got one, got momentum. They got two. We weren't trying to open it up or anything like that. Just stick with it. And of course, our goalie was excellent and had to be. I mean, if you ask Habs fans, they'd probably say that they got goalied a little bit, which, the Leafs got goalied in the first game of the regular season back in, a few months ago there. So ultimately, it was I like to see this. I mean, the team is showing levels of resilience, levels of effort that we hadn't really seen in the past under Sheldon Keefe, or really, in general, even Mike Babcock in his brief era, a little bit more with him. But now with Craig Berube, we're starting to see that if they go down, we're not always out of the game. Although they did show some, they had some rough games in that 3-game losing streak. But on the totality, I'm not going to judge them off 3 games. It's very interesting. And obviously, when Bobby McMahon scored with Matthew Nyes' stick, Bobby had a great game, which is something that is a big storyline as well. Like a lot of guys after the first period, it was a totally different team on our side. Bobby was skating well tonight. That's a strength. I mean, he's going to factor into the lineup even more now. Nick Robertson. And as the trade deadline approaches, you have to start to make decisions surrounding Pontus Holmberg, Bobby McMahon, and of course, Nick Robertson.
Yeah, on the other side of things too, like you just mentioned, like knowing how particular hockey players are, I'm actually surprised that he didn't use Matthew Nyes' sticks for the rest of the game. But it's pretty interesting. Morgan Riley, like I mentioned yesterday, changing stick tape color as well. But to go back to what you were talking about too, like what we're seeing this year, I think, is something we haven't seen in the last little bit, the last few years, 5, 6 years, this battle back, right? This different mindset. And it's not just the core four. I think there was way too much emphasis on the core four before. And last night we saw Bobby McMahon drag them back into the game, right? A guy who's not the captain, he doesn't wear a letter, and sometimes he's between the second line and the third line, right? And everyone kind of followed. And I think you need to have that on some nights. Craig Berube's talked a lot this year about no passengers. Everyone has a role on this team, and you all have to play to that role. And, if you don't, you might lose. So I do like that philosophy a lot better. We saw it last night, 7 different goal scorers last night. Nobody had 2 goals. So I think that was great. And again, this is closer to what I think that they actually are. And it's exciting because come playoff time, this is kind of what wins playoff games. We've seen it with other teams. We've seen, this is kind of how Florida beat the Leafs 2 years ago, right? This is how other teams beat the Leafs and go on runs and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see if this can carry over to the playoffs. I think it can. We just have to see it in action. And it was just very encouraging. And I like Craig Berube's comments, right? They make sense. It's common sense. And sometimes you need big performances from your goaltender as well, but that's fine.
Yeah, very good game for Joseph Wall. Very good game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. A huge win as they continue to hopefully roll tomorrow night. But let us know down below what your thoughts are. Thank you guys for watching.